All right. Okay. So what we want to start out with is like what a good definition of sexual harassment is. So what do you think that is?
Mm. I should have pulled up my quiz so I could have read off what I wrote. All that stuff. So in the case, it talked about how it consists of unwelcomed sexual advances and how a sexual harassment isn't just involving like men accusing or women accusing men, but also men accusing women or also accusations between sex. So
Yeah.
it goes all ways, and it's just that behavior of unwelcome advances. It's kind of the big thing I took away from it. There's probably a lot more, but
I thought it was interesting how there were kind of two different types. You know, how they had the quid pro quo, and then there was, I guess, what they call hostile work environment harassment. And how the quid pro quo was basically if someone in authority were to say, you have to do this sexual favor for me or be fired. You know, that was a quid pro quo, and the hostile work environment was, you know, when they're kind of hostile or would say offensive things towards them. And but it had to be kind of with the condition that the victim kind of found it abusive and a normal person would find it abusive. And it couldn't be just kind of like a one-time thing. It had to be repetitive, it seemed like.
Yeah, it makes me. Oh, sorry.
Very good. I was just thinking with what you said about reasonable. I thought it was interesting how it changed from reasonable person to a reasonable woman, like a woman's perspective on it. Because each gender brings different perspectives. And so what one gender may feel is reasonable versus what another thinks can vary widely.
Mm-hmm. I almost wonder if. Well, I was just kind of curious if anybody knew if quid pro quo was more common than the hostile or vice versa, or I was just kind of curious which one might be more common than the other. I didn't know if anybody would know the answer to that.
More often than not, it's the quid pro quo.
Really?
Yeah, it's like, what, you do this for me and I'll get you the promotion or whatever. That's what usually happens most in business.
Oh. Sorry, tangent, but I was just curious.
No, it's a good question. Understanding what's out there and we'll run into being on the job potentially. So, based on the Lone Star case and Martinez, I think. Wait. Lone Star was Martinez. Yeah. Based on Martinez's story, do you think her situation contains sexual harassment?
I'd say absolutely, especially if he's sticking his hand down her shirt and chuckling about it and almost saying that, don't say anything because I'm the boss. Like, nobody would believe you anyway. So I would definitely say it's falling under sexual harassment.
Yeah, most definitely. You can't just stick your hand down someone's shirt and then, it not be sexual harassment. That's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, even just the rubbing up against her and everything. I mean, that, from what the reading said, it sounded like that was a more common thing, and then the hand down the shirt was just the one time thing. But the rubbing up against her was an everyday thing. I was like, even that in and of itself is sexual harassment.
Well, it's not just that, but he also had like a bunch of vulgar or graphic comments, I think, that he was continually like saying to her.
Yeah. Says that at the end of the first page. So do you think the type of harassment she's experiencing is the quid pro quo or a hostile work environment?
I think in her situation, it was the hostile work environment because there was no for the quid pro quo. It's like, you do this for me and I'll do this for you, work related type of thing. But her situation, it was just don't say anything because nobody's gonna believe you anyway, and I'm gonna just continue doing it every day.
Yeah, definitely. And there's not enough evidence in the case to indicate that it would be quid pro quo. We'd need more information to indicate it's that way. So definitely agree with you. Any other thoughts on that?
No, I kind of agree. I just thought about how she was wanting to transfer, and by transfer, she'd be still working with the same company. So if it were, it just makes me think of the hostile work environment because she's trying to get out of that environment because of the harassment there. And it seems like if she were transferred, it would be a better environment. So yeah, I just agree. As the environment, or the hostile work environment.
So
But it definitely could be the other as well. We just don't know.
Yeah, especially because she keeps telling that guy that she's afraid of losing her job. So, I mean, we don't know exactly what was actually said in all the altercations between her and the guy. So who knows? I mean, but yeah, with the information we have, I think it's not quid pro quo unless we were to be able to hear or know what went on in some of the conversations they've had and encounters. So.
yeah. So do you think DaCosta got accurate advice when he called the council's office?
I think he got accurate advice for what to do in regards to the company's standing and his standing, but I don't think from what we read, I don't think he got great advice on how to approach her, or how to handle the situation, or bring it up to her specifically, or to the individual, the victim. But I feel like the advice was probably good to, protect the company and probably other victims. So
Yeah, I think the problem there is, that same day she needs to be out of it. And I don't know that the take would get her out of it that same day. Maybe the next day or maybe the day after that. But, there also needs to be action taken that day to get her out of that environment.
So do you think it's protecting the company by going to their EEO office versus going to the federal EEOC?
Well, every company wants to take care of it internally. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the point of having policies and procedures and stuff like that inside a company, is to try to reduce those incidences within the company before it escalates to a EEOC federal issue. I mean, I think he took it. I think he got the right information. I think he went the right direction on talking with her first. But he's got to make the decision to take the next step. You know, when he talked to the counsel's office, he didn't say any names. He didn't say what office or nothing like that. He left it all vague. So, you know, it's like, why couldn't he do that with the EEO office when he calls them for the company?
Do you think the lawyer could have given better advice?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
How do you
I
think?
think he gave advice within his realm of expertise. He told him legally what had to go on, but I don't think it was within his realm of expertise to tell him how to deal with it socially. But I don't know how you would go about that.
Yeah. I can see how that would be difficult to talk to somebody who has been sexually harassed.
Yeah, especially under the circumstances of the way it happened, of him, you know, hearing about it while she was on the phone, her being unaware that he was even in the office. I think that is just another variable added to the situation that makes it more uncomfortable, and then also makes it even harder to approach and deal with. So kind of agree that I don't know. I feel like there definitely could have been more advice, but maybe, I don't know, maybe the person that he talked to, like you said, didn't have that expertise in how to do that. I don't know.
Maybe you should have transferred him after that to an HR person. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, that would have been probably the best for social, you know.
I agree with you. I think either the counsel's office should have done a little bit more instead of just saying, "Hey, call them." They should have, you know, had some information themselves or got information and you know, made it available instead of just saying, "Oh, you have to call them." I was like, "Well, if you call them, why do we even have you in the office?
Yeah, exactly.
That's your job. Why even have you there if you're not going to do something?"
So why do you think the council insisted on a formal investigation?
I think mostly is because she didn't know who was calling. Like I said, he left it all vague. He didn't give names or departments, so she couldn't really give specific answers. I think is part of the problem for the work environment that they're in.
Would you think that would be common for people when dealing with sexual harassment, that they're not, they start out with vague, not really giving clear answers on who it is and what it's with?
I think it depends on the circumstances. I don't know. I mean, it's definitely an uncomfortable topic, especially if you know someone who's involved with it. And so I think it just depends on how the evidence is brought forth, whether someone's approached you and told you about it and they're coming to you, or if it's like this case where you either overhear it or whatever it may be. I think it just depends on how that information is conveyed or relayed to you.
So Based on the end of the story, how would you evaluate Jack Costa's options at this point? What do you think he should do?
I think he's asked to report it and to their office, and although it's kind of awkward, kind of let them deal with it for the most part and try to, stay out of it a little bit. But I do think that he needs to find some way to help her get out of the situation immediately, before the next day or whatever it may be. And maybe that's something he needs to discuss with that office too when he calls them. But I think that's his only option, is to take care of it and to really let the company investigate it, because he himself doesn't want to, and nobody wants to, and nobody really should get entangled in the middle of something that that doesn't necessarily pertain to them. But I guess he's already entangled in it if you think about it, because if it goes to court or something, then they're going to definitely use him as a witness. So
Yeah. So do you think it's an option for him to not say anything like she requested?
no, definitely not.
I don't
He has
think
to
so.
say something.
I think he needs
I
to.
think it could,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I just think about integrity and how, as much as he wants to protect her, if he were to keep his mouth shut, he's really not protecting her. And it's just important that he stay true to his integrity and do what's right, because if he doesn't, and he lets something like this slip, I mean, she may not be the only victim, and something worse could happen later down the road, and he could be held accountable, just like Gabe said. But yeah, I think he definitely is in a place where he has to say something, and by not saying something would be, putting him just as bad of a place as the offender.
Yeah. So you feel it's his integrity and his ethical responsibility, because he knows about it now, that he needs to report it?
Yeah.
And legal, as it says in the.
Yeah, especially that. We read that in the Harvard Business. It's like, if you know about it and you don't say anything, like you said, if it goes to court, that comes back on you and the company. And myself as a supervisor, I kind of read that when on the quiz, and I'm like, if I know about, if I'm the supervisor of the harasser, I can be sued as well. I'm like, whoa, that's that's pretty deep, And I'm like, I don't like that. Even if I don't know anything about it, I could be targeted too, just because I'm the supervisor of the harasser. But it's like, you always want to be aware of those type of things. And I think he told her he wouldn't do anything without talking to her again. I think he needs to pull her back in at the end of the day and be like, hey, we gotta do this. I mean, he has time to, like you said, call up and see about making the transfer to get her out of the situation, and see if that, he should do that. I think he needs to call that office and kind of be vague like he was with the counsel's office at first, and kind of get some more information. Maybe they can give him more information than the counsel's office did on what to do and how to handle that situation, and where to go to help her out of the situation right then.
Do you think he owes Julia Martinez an ethical duty if she feels unable to stick up for herself?
I think, yeah, if she's not going to do it herself, he needs to. And like we talked about before, we don't know how many other people are in the same situation. How many other females are in the office that he might be doing the same thing too? We don't know. So an investigation could bring that out, but he knows there's a problem there with her. He's got to take care of it.
Yeah, just going off of that, I think what he chooses to do is evidence of what he supports. So if he chooses not to say anything, then it's almost like he's supporting the harassment. But if he chooses to say something, then he's supporting that it isn't right and that he respects women or whatever it may be, and that he's just trying to do the right thing. So I think whatever action he chooses to take is definitely going to say a lot about his character.
Yeah. So how would you explain this all to Julia? She's the party that's maybe the most concerned and also the party that's getting harassed. Because do you feel like retaliation of her getting fired by her boss, who is the one doing the harassing, would be illegal?
Well, definitely. If he were to fire her for it, yeah. Well, any retaliation, period, for a claim, but
So do you think filing the claim protects her from potential firing in relation to the harassment?
I think to a degree, I mean, he could still end up firing her, but then she has the, backing of the government behind her to take him to court, and he can get in huge trouble for it. So in a sense, it protects her, but in a sense, it also makes her vulnerable because, he's not going to do anything until she actually files a claim if he decides to do something. And, but once she does have that legal backing so that it can be taken care of legally.
Yeah, she definitely has the upper hand.
I think even more so now that she's got Jack as a witness, even though it was unintentional. He saw how devastated it made her feel. So if he were to step up and and do the right thing and back her, then that's a witness that she's got on her side. Even though he didn't see it, he can tell that there's some tension there between him and her, between the other guy.
Yeah.
But I also think that if she were to stay in the office, I think Jack has more of an obligation to, now that he knows the situation, to not leave them alone. Even even if the other office does it, takes time to do an investigation. But with him knowing the situation, I think he should be there more, so they're never alone. It's going to help protect her that way as well if she were to stay in the office.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about the actions that he could take in regards to that. I mean, he could make sure, like you said, that she's not alone, whether it's walking from the office to her car or wherever the rubbing or whatever it was that was going on, just making sure that she's protected until everything is filed and taken care of. Because I mean, if he were to find out, he could lash out and be more aggressive or take out his anger. So just, I think keeping somebody with her would show even more of his effort to do the right thing and protect her. So it's a good point.
Yeah, I think that is a really good point. I mean, I wouldn't say that all sexual harassment is this way, but a lot of murders, a lot of, things like that happen because people are fearful of someone reporting them or whatever it may be. And so it would be important to have somebody with her to offer that protection. I mean, we don't know what the guy is actually like in that regard, but obviously he doesn't have very high moral standards if he's sexually harassing someone at work like this. So
I also kind of find it interesting. She's not willing to let anybody know about it, and she's kind of embarrassed that Jack found out because she's worried that she don't want anybody to know. She don't want to report it, but she also wants to keep it from her husband because her husband will take action himself. And I was like, that in my mind, if I were her, that in my mind would be like, it needs to be taken care of. If you're worried your spouse is going to come in and take care of it themselves, then yeah, it's a big enough issue that you need to report it.
what do you do though to prevent the husband from doing something stupid to one of your employees, even though your employee is under sexual harassment, review or whatever you want to call it?
Well, I think the biggest thing is is if she reports it and it's under investigation and it's being taken care of, I think it's a little bit different than, her husband just finding out and, this is happening, but nobody knows, then yeah,
It's true.
he would probably go out and take care of it himself. But if it's reported and it's being taken care of, I think, he might be a little bit more supportive and be there for his wife as well. But, back off a little bit as far as what she's worried about.
Yeah, I almost wonder because right now she's hiding it from her husband. But if it were reported, I think that information during the investigation would be really confidential, and it would be really, that information wouldn't span out, I don't think, very fast. I think it would be a very private investigation, and then once a conclusion was made, maybe then when it went public, her husband would then know, and where the husband couldn't do anything at all. But I definitely think it's better that an investigation happens than her hiding it. But that's the only thing I could think of in regards to preventing her husband from doing something is the confidentiality of the investigation. But I could be wrong. I don't know.
Well, in my opinion, if I cut somebody off, but, it's like holding that information from her husband and bottling up inside, what's that doing to their relationship at home? How's that affecting their relationship and their marriage by not letting him in and letting him know? It's like she's worried that he's going to just go off on the deep end and take care of himself. But what if he, did the right thing, surprised her and, reported it for her type of thing, She's worried about the extreme, but she's not thinking about, what could happen to help her.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of guys who put on the face of being tough sometimes. And when they would really react differently in the situation than what they always tell people or always tell their friends or always tell their wife, whatever it may be. So, yeah, I think the likelihood is he would probably act within the law and support her in reporting it and things. But, I guess that's hard to make that assessment when we don't have any information on what her husband's like. We just know what she's saying, like he said, the extremes that she think will happen. So
So, like we've been talking about, each company has their own sexual harassment policy and procedures. So, each person is. We're moving along a little bit from the Lone Star case and thinking about how we would apply policy and procedures. So there are 4 rules. So each person gets one. So we have the potential victim of harassment, the accused harasser, the bystander, and the legal counsel. Does anybody have a preference on which one they want?
All I heard was bystander. So, out of the 4.
I'll just
So,
of the way they show
you
up.
can sign them.
So, Christopher, if you'll think about it as from the perspective of a potential victim of harassment. And then Gabe, if you'll think of it from the perspective of the accused harasser. And then Joseph, the perspective of the bystander. And then I will do the legal counsel. Did everybody hear that time?
Yep.
Okay. So, given your assignment, identify the things that would be most important that you would want to see in new policy and procedures that your organization is formulating to govern sexual harassment issues. Okay, so you're gonna have 5-ish minutes about that.
That's awesome. What a neat experience. That's what? Cool. That's awesome.
Does everybody have ideas, or do you need a few more minutes?
They're good. I'm good.
I'm good.
That's good. Okay. So start with Christopher. What were some of the things that you thought should be included, and how did that role influence what you were thinking?
So I definitely tried to have some empathy here when I was playing the part of the victim and trying to really understand what it would be like and how degrading it would feel. But I would want to know that there would be first and foremost a safe place to report a cause, a place that I could go to. I kind of thought about like a counselor's office. You know, you go to a counselor and everything there that you talk about is private, and it's, you know, that you can trust the person that you talk to, and you know that outside of that counseling office you don't have an obligation to speak to that person if it makes you feel uncomfortable. There's just a lot of confidentiality. So I'd want that safe place, that confidence, to be trusted. I would want to know that actions, or at least an investigation, would take place, and then to say something and then nothing ever happening. I also thought about how it'd be important to have trainings to educate their employees on what qualifies as sexual harassment, because I feel like I don't know, like I'm learning about it, we're all learning about all this stuff, and had I not taken this class or learned this part of in this course, you know, that could potentially harm me in my future. So I think if there were trainings that talked about, you know, sexual harassment in regards to threats or social media or touching or even joking around, how all those, what qualifies as sexual harassment. And then the other thing was I would want protection, just to eliminate the threats of quid pro quo, or to just to know that not only was my report going to be confidential, but that I would be protected, that I wouldn't have to worry about losing my job immediately, or my friends, or whatever it may be. But those are some of the things I thought about for the victim.
Thank you. Gabe, What were your
Um,
thoughts?
For me, I thought that, one of the big things I noticed in the case was it doesn't say anywhere that she ever told him no, or that she ever, gave him warning that if he didn't stop, that she was going to do something about it. And so, as the aggressor, the perpetrator, I would really want to have a warning. I would want to know that, hey, no, because sometimes I think it's hard for the perpetrators to realize that maybe that it is unwanted. Maybe they do it jokingly, but the other person really doesn't like it and doesn't take it that way. And I think sometimes that's important for that person to know, because sometimes those kind of people would stop. They're like, oh, I didn't realize that it was that big of a deal to you. And so I think that's something I would want. And I'd also want confidentiality if it did go somewhere. I wouldn't want my name to get out everywhere so that everybody looked at me and was like, oh, look at that pervert.
So wait, man, I'm like this. That's what it was. I love it.
Thank you. Joseph.
Yeah.
Kind of going like what Christopher was saying. I was thinking, what training on what sexual harassment is, and the what to kind of look for, situations and behaviors, and then obviously, to know where to go, if you do witness something, or hear something, or because you could see it, you could hear about it, like Maria confessed to whoever it was she was talking to on the phone. What if you're that person that your a friend confides in you about a situation like that? Where do you take that information to get the situation taken care of to help your friend? So that's kind of what I was thinking about.
Thank you. And then what I thought about is kind of things that you guys have already touched on, where the people need to report, like different things that would help protect the company from receiving the retaliation of someone saying you ignored it. So, where to report it, so the harassed feels safe. And I feel like the legal counsel should have guidelines on more than just saying, here, call this number, but like what they should actually have the people who are calling in to do, like set of instructions so that it's a little bit more clear and it feels like they're listening. And then also office training so that people know what needs to be done, and so they're all aware of it, because you can combat a lot of things if people are aware of the good and the bad. So what do you guys think should be in an actual policy for a company?
Well, I think in part of that policy, it also needs to be that both sides of the story are investigated too. Because sometimes people say things to get back at those above them because they may be mad about something. I think that's an important part of the policy.
Absolutely.
But I say that because I know a while back, my dad, he's a nurse, but he's a supervisor, and he had to report this lady because she wasn't showing up to work, and she then claimed he was racist, and so then they put them both on like probation, investigated the whole thing, and then the truth came out. And so I think it's important to look at both sides, because if you always went with who seems the victim, you could be wrong. They could be making up something.
I see that all the time. I'm a supervisor in retail, and you'll have a customer complain about something, and I've gone to where I go to talk to the associate, pull them aside, and get their side of the story. And the customer won't leave. They'll come back and they'll be up in there trying to yell at the cashier and or the associate that I'm talking with, and they'll be twisting their story as they're yelling. And I'm like, wait a minute, you said this, now you're saying this. So the kind of the truth comes out a little bit when they're changing up their story. But it's like I always go and get the cashier's point of view as well on what happened, and then any other customers that saw it. I've had a lot of people like, well, no, they did this. Your cashier did what they're supposed to do.
You had a good point there. It makes me think about a jury. You need several different people to be involved in several different views, but also you need to be able to take the bias out of it, because I feel like it'd be so easy to stick up for somebody or if you don't know the full situation. I mean, there's so many biases that can go into stuff that can change the way you go about reporting things. So I think the more people you have eliminates the bias that could come into play with situations like this.
Okay. Well, my computer is almost dead, and I have class in a few minutes, so I'm gonna move on. But you guys all have really good comments. So there's a final 2 paragraphs wrap up of the Lone Star case. Said when Zach called the corporate counsel, he forgot about caller ID. The lawyer used the information he gave her to figure out the people he was talking about. She contacted the Lone Star EEO, which launched a formal investigation. The EEO tried hard to get Martinez to cooperate. French denied all charges, claiming that Martinez had made up her story to protect herself from pending layoffs. DaCosta was asked for evidence, but he didn't have any. Julia, Martinez's husband, found out what was going on, beat up Julia, and forced her to quit. French survived the investigation with only a bruised reputation. He blamed everything on DaCosta for calling corporate counsel. There was so much animosity between DaCosta and French that DaCosta left the company after 3 months.
My goodness.
So there's obviously some rough spots with maybe Lone Star, how they handled it, and things like that.
I'm actually kind of surprised about the husband's response. He went the total opposite of what she thought he would do.
Yeah, he went after her rather than the company. So it shows the importance of sexual harassment policies and making sure everybody's informed. And I don't know, I liked what you said, Gabe, about maybe a warning. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of different important things of seeing both sides of the story and what's happening.
Yeah, it was weird how in the story not once did it mention that she said no. So that was interesting to me.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
No, he did. He was in an awkward position, and so it definitely made it more difficult to know what to do.
Well, I think the fact that she didn't cooperate is what kind of spiraled it into that situation.
Yeah. Sexual harassment policies, they're important.
Good discussion.
And then with the doohickey, did we still want to have all our parts written up by tomorrow so that we could have editing done on like Friday and early Saturday, so it's done early rather than later? Does that still work for
I think that's
everybody?
a good idea.
Sounds good. So if everybody can get their parts written up by tomorrow, then I'll take time, either most likely Friday, to edit and make sure it's all good, and then you guys can take a look at it.
Yeah, just remember,
Perfect.
it is due 8 a.m. Mountain Time on Monday morning. So
I'll plan on submitting Saturday because I don't like pushing up against a deadline
yeah,
like that.
Yeah.
especially with that big of a paper to upload. And he's supposed to be working on the link to upload because it's not there. So I sent him a message on the community board. So he's working on that link, so be able to submit it.
So
Perfect.
awesome. Well, good discussion. Thanks for your thoughts. See you next week.